A closer look at newly unsealed documents from a gruesome case in Brown County. Taylor Schabusiness is accused of killing and dismembering a man in Green Bay last year. Emily Byer was in court today and has more on what these documents.
Yeah, Brittany, these documents go in depth about a recent request from the defense to drop a charge against Schabusiness. Just hours ago, the judge ruling to unseal the details of this motion, but keeping the exhibits sealed, he said, due to the disturbing nature of the photos. The motion filed by the defense asked to dismiss the third-degree sexual assault charge. The defense making several arguments in the motion, claiming there is insufficient evidence to support that the victim, Shad Thyrion, was sexually assaulted. The defense says that's because Thyrion was already dead and he couldn't consent to sexual acts. The state replied to this motion saying it's untimely and that count 3 is supported by probable cause. The defense wanting these documents to remain sealed, saying they were sensitive. The state saying they understand the concerns of keeping the exhibits sealed, but not the motion document. The judge ultimately agreeing.
Those are going to remain sealed. As far as the motion itself, I can't find any real reason why the motion itself can't be unsealed from the preliminary seal and accessed by the public. Frankly, in reviewing the motion, most of the information that's outlined in there to support the motion was contained in the criminal complaint.
Now, the judge not making a decision on this motion, likely planning to take it up on June 13th, along with several other motions. Brittany.